Hello, and welcome back to Benjy's Cafe podcast. Joining me for a sporting flat white in episode 4 is the sports broadcaster and voice of England cricket, Graham Woodward. Over the last 25 years, Graham has established himself as one of the leading voices in sports stadiums throughout Great Britain, most notably in the world of cricket. He has been the voice of England cricket and Lords on major match days for 13 years, including announcing to a global television audience of billions. Graham is also a familiar voice in the world of horse and greyhound racing, and is one of the leading voices in the world of oval motorsport, producing content and presenting on many of the top media channels. In this episode, we discussed camaraderie in the sports industry, the need for balance in high-pressure environments, and being versatile. And Graham shares the difficulties of living with Crohn's disease, plus his memorable experiences from his time in cricket, including the day England won the 2019 World Cup final at Lords.
The World Cup was something very, very special, and it was an amazing month. And obviously doing the final was magnificent. And it's trying to keep your emotions, because you want to stay calm.
Yeah.
You want to be that calm voice. And you don't want to sound like you're panicking or you're being influenced by each delivery. And that's a big thing. You know, you've got to remain calm, and you've got to remain full of control of your emotions. That's the key.
With a voice as rich as his knowledge, welcome to Benjy's Cafe podcast, Graham Woodward. Good morning, Graham. How are you?
Morning, Ben. Very, very well. How are you? Great to be here. Looking forward to it, and hopefully can answer your questions.
Well, Graham, we've had a few actors on, but I promise you, none of them have had your wonderful treacle-esque tones. When I first heard you at the cricket, I thought Leslie Phillips had hopped on the mic or Barry White. Your voice is amazing. I'm from an acting background. I have to worry about and watch my vocal health during a run of a show. How about you during a cricket season or during a long broadcast?
Yeah, it is testing, particularly when you go through a busy spell, particularly in the summer, and you're trying to cover different things. But I think I've just become accustomed to knowing when I'm struggling a little bit, and therefore I can rest up a bit, or I can take the action. But yeah, the Lemsips and the Lockets, they're never far away. That's kind of the key. But I'm quite lucky that I've come to become accustomed to knowing when I'm struggling a little bit, and that's when you can take a rest, or you can almost preempt things, get some vitamins in you, and get ahead of it, really.
Similarly, with acting almost, throughout the summer, Graham, you're away from home for a long period of time. Essentially, you're on tour, aren't you? You're working at Lords, Oval, all over Emirates, Old Trafford, Durham. It's a tough schedule, and there's no real downtime, is there? So I imagine just keeping yourself healthy and having that stamina is pretty important, right?
Yeah, I think particularly as you get older, now I've hit 30, I've got to consider my actions. But in terms of...
Is that inside leg?
I wish. In terms... It's one of those things that the travel is the job, just like so often in acting. You're doing a show, you're doing a run, and the on-stage bit, I wouldn't say is the easy bit, but that's the flow. The hard bit is being away from home. It's being in digs, it's being on the road. And it's the same in sport, as you say, when you get a test series or a run. I used to do T20, so I used to do a lot of run of games. That actually was even worse in terms of the travelling, because you'd be going night after night after night. With the test matches, we are in one place for 5 days, and obviously the day before. So at least you get some kind of home life with a hotel, which we're fortunate are quite nice on the whole. So yeah, it's a massive, massive factor of the job. And, in June, July, August, quite often, I can only be at home maybe 5-6 nights a month if I'm lucky.
Well, you do such a wonderful job, Graham. I've worked with you at England Cricket, probably 10, 15 years. I really want to just say a huge well done. I've got a lot of admiration for you, Graham. You've got your skill, professionalism, but you bring so much experience and joy to a day's play, to a day's work. I just wondered where you kind of get that ethos from, that wanting to kind of spread the joy and to make everybody's day as kind of happy as possible. You're such a great positive presence.
That's very good of you, and obviously you're a very, very similar type of character, Ben, and everyone loves being around you, which is positivity is a massive thing. I think there's a touch of, particularly with sport, and particularly with what goes on, you can't necessarily control what goes on the field. But I think if you can kind of add something to the day, or at least give a positivity to it, and with that situation, can it make or break someone's day? Probably not, but you can add to it. And a lot of my experience, I feel, the events I work at is because of I've been in the crowd. I've been there. I've been watching. I've been a spectator. I've been a fan, whatever you want to refer it as. And I think when you're there, you know what you want to hear. You know what helps. You know what doesn't. And I've always said, ever since a young age, going along, taking the good, taking the bad. And that's whatever profession. And that's what I say to a lot of young people now. When you are at an event, when you're doing something, take the good, take the bad, because you can use that to your advantage. And I think if you can add to somebody's day, and it's so different because the job has changed so much, particularly in cricket, in a lot of things with the way that things are presented and developed. But if you can just add something, because it's not, it's not about that person on the mic. That's not the show, but you just need to settle into the surroundings. You need to be there. And yeah, just the odd wry smile maybe that someone might get, and those comments that some people will, have a little chuckle to. That's what can help make someone's day, because they're not there to listen to that. They're not there, but they're there to enjoy themselves. And if you can just add something slightly to that, then obviously I think that's part of doing the job.
And interestingly, Graham, I come from an acting background, as you know, but so many times I listen to you if I'm roaming round the ground or if I'm sat with you in the commentary area. Just so many tiny little nuances. You will add just a few words to kind of add gravitas to an occasion. I just wondered, did that come naturally to you, or did you have some mentors that you kind of learnt from? Because it's very easy, isn't it? You can be in a crowd of any sporting event and the PA, the announcer, will just wash over you, or you just take it for granted. But actually it's concise information delivered accordingly to that environment and that stage of a match, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think that's where experience comes in, because, I've been fortunate in most of the things now I do. I've kind of done at all levels. And that's a big factor, because you experience and you see situations and you kind of know timing. Johnny Dennis, who did the job before me, was absolutely outstanding. Oh. Johnny was the voice of Lords in England for many, many years before I took over. And I got to work with Johnny on many occasions. And Johnny was a brilliant actor. Johnny was a brilliant voice artist. And I learnt so much from him, because before I did England, I did 12 years of voice of T20. When that was very much establishing. That was where I did a lot of the touring with that. And while I was doing that, Johnny was doing the internationals. And obviously it got to a point where, right, we need to get you shadowing Johnny, because if he's not well, you need to step in. We did the ICC Cricket T20 World Cup in 2009, which England hosted, which was my first ICC event. And Johnny and I did it together. And of course, there it was. Johnny was the sensible voice, and there I was, the voice of razzmatazz and the voice of entertainment. How disappointing they were after that. But in terms of, it was a great opportunity. And I got to meet Johnny, and he was just such wonderful company and just such a brilliant, brilliant person. And I learnt more of him about timing. I remember going along to a test match for the first time. And you see and hear things. And of course, what a lot of people don't know, Ben, and you're there, particularly now, not so much then, but everything, people think, oh, well, if I was going to do this, I'd do it this way, I'd do it this way.
Yeah.
Why does he do it like that? Why does he do it like that? Well, 90% of it is nothing to do. It's not my choice. It's meant to be done in a certain way. And you kind of go in and think, oh yeah, I need to get this, need to do this. And then when you go and you see someone like Johnny doing it, you then understand why it's done that way. And it's so brilliantly done. I also had a really nice tutor at media A-levels I did, which was June Harben. And June had also taught Rob Hawthorne, who Sky Sports commentator on football still to this day. And she was very, very good as well, because I was at the stage where I wanted to be a journalist. I did the media, and all of a sudden, I had learned the art of voiceover and radio, and really, really loved it. And June was very, very good as well. And I learned a lot there. But it was Johnny, really. Such a brilliant character to be around. And some of the stories, different world back then. He was a massive theatre lover. He was a massive thespian. He was, just stories. You'd get him a glass of wine and off he'd go. And, you'd be talking about how everybody was, in Theatreland used to meet up afterwards in Soho. And everyone used to go to Danny LaRue's club. And you sort of think, wow, And you'd be talking to Johnny. And one minute you'd be talking about the two Ronnies, then you'd be talking about Hattie Jakes, then you'd be talking about June Whitfield, just, Tommy Cooper. And Johnny was great friends with all of these people, and it was great to listen to those stories. Once he'd had a drink or two, he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But he was great to learn from about life in so many ways, and I did learn so much. And he was just such a brilliant, commanding voice.
And interestingly, you mentioned there, Johnny's theatrical background, but I think there's quite a big link with cricket and theatre. At Lord's, we've seen Sir Stephen Fry there, of course. I'm sure you've interviewed. He rang the bell, I think, last summer to start the day's play. Russell Crowe, I've seen there. Yeah. So many theatrical people seem to enjoy cricket. It's just a very sociable game, isn't it? I think it lends itself to, to characters, be it on the pitch or off it.
Yeah, and connections as well. Because Russell Crowe, Jeff Crowe is a match referee, played for New Zealand. Brilliant man. Lovely man. And Russell, you see the stars. And of course, a lot of them just like to, I think, I remember Theresa May being a massive cricket fan, or always there. John Major, talking about another Prime Minister who's always at Surrey. Yeah. All these people that just love the game. And there is that connection. And talking of Johnny, we always used to see Chris Tarrant at Lord's. And I remember one morning walking round, and one of Johnny's showbiz stories was that he was the voice of Bertie Bassett in the All Sorts advert back in the 80s, of which Chris Tarrant had appeared in. And whenever we were wandering around Lord's, and Johnny saw Chris, and I must admit, I've not seen Chris there for a number of years, but he was another one. But Johnny used to walk past and he would just say morning, and Chris Tarrant would reply with "Morning, Bertie," because that's exactly what was said in the ad, and it was just as funny. But it is great, and it's funny how so many people just love the game of cricket, and Lord's is just obviously such a fantastic place.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Just a great venue, and it's mad to think I've kind of been the voice there for what is now 12 years just on my own, really, on major matches. And it's a great honour, and it's fantastic, and hopefully keeping, we're on the same tone and the same level that Johnny did, because it was so brilliant, and he did for so many years.
Can you remember your first visit to Lord's, Graham, as a spectator? I imagine you used to go and watch Sussex as a young man, as a boy.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first visit to Lord's?
I remember really well. It was the 93 NatWest final, which was one of the great finals of limited over cricket. Different world then, 60 overs, and it was... Warwickshire scored 321, I think, something along the lines. Of course, you're a big Warwickshire man, so you'll probably remember this. I know you're probably not old enough, but they scored a massive score. Sorry, Sussex scored a massive score, 320-odd, and Warwickshire chased it down. Cricket was very, very different then. But just, this was the place to go to watch cricket. It was just a fantastic venue.
What amazes me, Graham, which I think you should be so proud of, you mentioned your first visit to Lord's there. And my goodness, you're such a hard-working chap, Graham. And then 2019, you're there, World Cup final, England, Super Over, New Zealand. Like, could you ever envisage that, to be in that predicament from being a young lad going to see Sussex there in a one-day final?
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? Because, I mean, what a day that was. It was an epic tournament. It was a brilliant tournament. And the ICC events, we've done, like I said, 2009 T20 World Cup, done a couple of Champions trophies, been lucky enough to do Test Championship finals, lots of different things on the world stage. But obviously the World Cup was something very, very special. And it was an amazing month, travelling around and doing various games. And obviously doing the final was magnificent. And England were just brilliant, that tournament, really. And that era, just fantastic. And it was fantastic to be part of. And that day was just so strange, because it had started in the drizzle. It wasn't the sort of perfect summer day that you kind of hope for the World Cup final. And there were so many twists and turns. And I remember thinking, because I'm not sure if you remember, Ben, but the event was obviously broadcast by Sky, but Channel 4 had been given the rights for the final because England were in. They put it to a terrestrial audience. So I was aware in this country there'd be obviously a lot bigger audience for the event. And throughout the day, it was one of those strange ones. There were so many twists in that game, and I thought, England have won this, New Zealand have won this, England have won this, and what goes through your mind? but you never kind of really think. And there was only one thing, and I hate looking back on things and various things, but there was just before, literally 5 overs before the end, we were in a different position at Lords to where we are. The white ball game and the where we have music and used to be done in a different place. So we weren't in the Warner stand, which is where we are based at Lords. And 5 overs from the end, we got some ICC people around us because nobody had considered this super over. And
God,
I've had it a couple of times in one-day finals and big finals with a full audience where it's getting close. And we had one brilliant T20 finals day where we had 2 games that went to a super over. So super overs weren't unusual, but it had been not spoken about. So 5 overs to go, I could see what the scores were. And I asked the ICC, what happens if the scores are level? So we kind of got a little bit of, and again, that was just fluke, but maybe again, just because I'd been there before and I'd fallen flat on my face once or twice before with that situation, we at least knew we had the super over. But then, of course, the drama and the super over was just phenomenal. So I kind of had a bit of an inkling of what the super over was, because nowadays super overs are in most competitions, but even in the World Cup, 2019 wasn't necessarily the dumb thing that cricket fans knew. And the only thing when this went to the super over at Lords, there's that element of what I'm saying I need to say right, because that's one of the parts of my job, knowing cricket, and that's what people don't get. The experience of a match situation, you've been there, Ben, you see, off the field, there is the script, there is the production crew. But when it comes to on the field, that's when I get my, not freedom, but that's where I take over, and I have to, whatever I'm saying has to be right. And I'm trusted, that what I'm saying about the match or the situation, particularly when it comes to rain or intervals, and interruptions, what I say is right. So when it came to that super over, I was very much aware that I had to say right, because we had 27,000 people in Lords. Nobody had a clue what was going on. Probably the players didn't know what was going on. So it had to be right. So there was that nervous thing, and that was the only time. But it all became a bit of a blur, really. It was so mad, that last hour and a half. I mean,
the ebbs and flows of cricket, my goodness.
It's not a laughing matter, but it kind of is now all these years on. Jeff Cards, the brilliant man behind the security at Lords, told me afterwards they had a record number of people passing out in a half an hour spell during that, because people just couldn't take the drama. People passing out everywhere because
Graham, I think that's like people watching my panto performance for very different reasons.
I wouldn't say that. The highlight of many people's year.
Gosh, but really, is that so? It was so intense. People just people
passing out. They had a record number of people needing medical attention because of the drama.
Wow.
And it really was. It was epic. And it's trying to keep your emotions, because you want to stay calm. You want to be, you want to sound that calm voice, and you don't want to sound like you're panicking or you're being influenced by each delivery. And that's a big thing, and that's why it's very difficult in any sports club, whether it's football, rugby, and I know now there is almost the tendency that you can be biased and you can be excitable, particularly when you listen to some of the football grounds of the country, and they almost encourage it. But on the whole, you've got to remain calm, and you've got to remain full of control of your emotions. And of course, I obviously was desperate for England to win. No doubt New Zealand are such a brilliant team. They're so well run. Some of that team in particular, just some great guys. So if anyone was going to win it other than England, I think everyone wanted New Zealand to win. And brilliant players and team, of course, many of which still feature. But it's just fantastic. But it was just a case of whatever I'm putting out at whatever stage, make sure it's right. That's the key. That's the key with anything.
And at what point, England have won the game? Was there any point you realise, crikey, my voice is about to be heard, literally globally?
No, because nowadays the presentations, it's standard in this country that they take my voice, or they take the voice of the presenter in the ground on those major matches. But back then it wasn't. We kind of just started doing that, and it was a big thing because, one of my big things with it is something like that should be done properly, and you see it in some countries, it's still a mess. It's still a mess. People with clipboards all over the place.
It's got to be clean, hasn't it? And I have to say, Phil and the team at the ECB, that their standards are spot on, aren't they? And you're a big part of that, of course.
It's a huge thing, and it's part of it. And a lot of stuff goes to stadium. Some of the stuff we do goes to broadcast. Some goes to both. But when it's a world audience, which the ICC events do, and this was the first time I'd done it at an ICC event, I sort of thought it was so out of my mind. I didn't have time to be nervous, and literally just as they were about to throw to me was the only moment that it hit what was actually going on. And bearing in mind England had won, I knew there was going to be an awful lot of people watching in this country, and the director of the whole package was talking to Ian Smith, who just such a brilliant broadcaster, Kiwi over rugby, cricket, whatever, just one of those brilliant, versatile broadcasters. And I was in position, everyone was in position, and he said to Ian Smith in my ear, and he said, okay, 30 seconds till the presentation. So I thought, right, here we go. And literally he, with 10 seconds to go, having had no real communication, said, right, Smithy, chuck down to Wooders. Wooders coming to you in 10. Broadcast going out to around 9 billion people. Don't fuck it up.
9 billion?
And then, because of the Indian audience and because of everything else, or whatever he said. And I just thought, right, okay. Fair enough. And he counted me in, and I went away, and I didn't really think about it. I just cracked on, and obviously to have that footage to look back on on all ICC events that will forever, be England winning the World Cup was obviously magic, and obviously something I do look back on. I'm delighted that I managed to time it right with the lift as well, which is, as when you're doing something live, sometimes you can't always see when the captain's got the trophy, etc., etc. So looking back on was brilliant, but just an amazing day. It really was a fantastic day and a brilliant event, of which the whole of ICC and ECB should have been totally proud of for the way they put it on.
So you mentioned Ian Smith there, fantastic. He crosses cricket, rugby union as well. Rugby league, I think, too. You seem to flit effortlessly, Graham, between cricket. You have horse racing, greyhound racing with Sky, speedway, motor car racing. Is it hard switching sports so effortlessly?
No, I think one thing that I say to young broadcasters is try and be versatile with the different things you do, because it obviously opens up hopefully plenty of avenues for you. But the difference with voice work, don't leave yourself. One thing a few years ago, I think people sort of tarred me with this. This guy's the voice of Lords. He's the voice of Test cricket. Therefore, he speaks in a posh accent. He speaks well mannered. That's his style. He can't do this. He can't do that. Forgetting that I'd done 12 years of Tinty, completely different style. But that's kind of the job for me. And I learnt that by doing 4-day cricket. I learnt that with doing general 1-day cricket, T20 cricket, and loving and respecting every aspect of the game, but understanding and being able to adapt. And that's kind of the key. It can be random. I can be commentating on a stock car meeting where, it's national banger cars, which are all crashing, or it can be national hot rods, which are very fast, very expensive cars racing around. I can be doing a greyhound race for Sky or for Entene Coral Labrooks, which lasts 30 seconds. That's a completely different skill to then the following morning going to Lords and doing a test match and showing that the right respect. And that's why I always try and say to young people, try and do as much as you can. Voiceover work, it's a great thing. It's a brilliant thing. But, you might be doing a voiceover ad for a carpet company. Yeah. You might be doing a voiceover, which is a very straight-laced, book read or something like that. But being able to do both is half the battle. You kind of adapt to situations. Yeah. Sometimes you just give yourself that extra bit to think before you talk. Those are the little keys and the little things which make a difference.
That's so interesting. And I think that if you're prepared, you've done your homework. I think if you're centred yourself, wherever you're with, whichever team you're with, be it an ODI, a T20, be it a stock car race or, greyhound race, I think if you're controlled within yourself, within your mind, clear of what you're doing, then it gives you that bit of leniency, doesn't that bit of buoyancy to be able to adapt, and that's really important as well. But I think that does come from experience, and also getting to work, literally getting hold of the mic, knowing that you're in control of your skills.
Yeah, 100%. I think with certain things, you're the leader of the circus.
Yeah.
You're the master. You've got to be in control. And quite often, if you do an end of season awards do, or you do a party in a room, you get control of that room, because if you lose it, you'll never get it back. And if someone then needs to be put in their place because they're given a bit of mouth, you do that. And it's kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Particularly when there's a bit of alcohol involved.
Oh, gosh.
And you know what I mean? The way people get. But it's the same. You need to get the respect and command of. You need to be. Yes, there is a laugh. There is a joke. There is a bit of slap and tickle information. But if something important's happening, you need to be that commanding voice that people are going to take note of. And that is such a massive, massive thing. And to have your notes, I mean, one thing I will always have, I'm quite fortunate that in the sports I work, I've obviously got quite a knowledge. There is still odd things where you need names, and you might just have a bit of paper with odd bits. You do that 5-10 minutes of, even though you don't probably feel you need to because you feel comfortable. Once you've got that comfort that you know what you're talking about, that is key to it. When I was growing up, you had the brilliant Des Lynam, Steve Ryder, people like that.
Oh, Steve Ryder, my goodness.
And just fantastic anchormen that were in control. They were brilliant. You could chuck anything at them. And there was, they weren't the only ones. There was plenty of others as well.
Yes. Literally, I think, Graham, in about 15 years, I've heard you made probably 2-3 blips.
I'm just thinking, if I've got 2 words wrong in however many hours of broadcasting or a couple of things, I'm thinking, I'll take that. And for the amount of live broadcasting it is, you are going to get odd words and odd things that do go wrong,
Yeah.
As you know yourself.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Sometimes even on stage, words come out that shouldn't.
Yeah. And it is, I think, with experience and life, and you learn, interesting for me, since I've become alcohol free, it's like I can really easily if I do have a slip, I just think, okay, that's happened, it's not the end of the world. But in the past I've been on pitch presenting in front of a crowd where I have ballsed up, and it's like crucified me for days. And I think that's a really good point you made, Graham. It's like, it's gonna happen, especially if you're announcing or commentating. My goodness, the amount we have to absorb, remember, and relay to an audience on back at home or within stage, it's a lot, isn't it? And it's important, I think, with a lot of things in life, you just, no one's going to die. Just try and let it go and move on, because it's going to happen.
And I used to let it beat me up, and I did. I used to think about it for days, and I used to think, and social media, which plays such a huge part with things. And I remember and I always think people sometimes say, well, perhaps you should have gone to the next step. Why didn't you do the next step? I'm not sure what that next step actually is, or whether it exists or whatever. But in some people's minds, they see it as that. But I'm not sure I could have stood that 10, 20 years ago. Now there is the element where in life, you just learn to be like, you know what? You don't care. You respect those. You respect people, but you take advice from those that have done the job, or that know what they're talking about, or at least have got the intelligence to actually comment on things and understand the situation. It's the sort of job no one ever says, well done, mate, that was really, really good, that was a brilliant one. But you get 1 or 2 words wrong and the messages are going off, blah, 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 giving you the grief. Yeah. And that's the position you're in. I get that. But no one ever turns around and says, cool, that was a really good one today.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I find that. It's that people can be so quick just to hop on a mistake, can't they? It's like, hang on, what about all the joy you're bringing? What about all the expertise you're bringing and knowledge to, thousands of people's days? And you're fantastic, Graham. That must be something you're so proud of, looking back at, your cricket career.
No, it's very good of you to say. It's very nice, and as you say, it's a brilliant team. And behind that team, I look back. Probably the thing that I am proud of is that I did cricket from '98. Yeah. Fell into the positions I fell into in a really bizarre way with regards to how I started, and I got sort of headhunted by the ECB mid-2020 was really starting to take off. They were using what I would call a lot more high-profile celebrities at the time to host the T20. But what you had there, you had faces that were known on camera in grounds, but when it came to the cricket, it was just embarrassing. And getting basic information wrong, straight away you lose the crowd because they're laughing, and you're like, well, he doesn't even know.
Their trust has gone, hasn't it?
It has, and that's the thing. There were several other instances, and I got approached whether I would like to do it, and I absolutely jumped at the chance and loved it.
Where were you at that stage? Were you with Sussex?
Yeah, so I'd done Sussex at 98, so I was very fortunate. I wanted to be a journalist when I was growing up, and I'd gone to do the media course, which was a really bizarre course because I'd failed miserably at school the last year or two, but I had a lot of issues. I suffer from Crohn's disease as well. That was starting to take its place. No excuse, the last year or two at school, I was hopeless. Funny enough, the one thing that I did do well in was drama, which you'll probably find hard to believe. But
hey, we're a good double act, Graham. We bring all the showbiz to England cricket. I love it.
No, it's always great fun. So I became a member at Sussex, and they will always be my team.
Yeah.
And it was early 91, 92. Went to that NatWest final 93. And we used to sit, there was a big group of members at Sussex in the pavilion. And one of the ladies, bless her, Jean, she said to me, well, if you're going to be out here in the summer, why don't you, be a steward and earn some money? So actually, it's not a bad call. So for a year or two, I had the white coat on and was checking passes,
It's like the equivalent of me working front of house. I used to work front of house when I first started acting.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Just to be part of it and absorb the atmosphere. It was so exciting.
Definitely. And there I was with a white coat on. I think probably many people years on think I probably should have been taken away by men in white coats. But I had this white coat on and checking these passes. That summer, so I was doing some stewarding, and the secretary used to do what is now effectively the chief exec, used to do the ground announcements during the day. And back then, of course, you've got to remember there was no Cricinfo app, there was no BBC Cricket. So we used to give lunchtime and tea time scores, and the secretary used to do it and used to hate doing it. And there was one day we were at Horsham, and I was stewarding and on the players' gate or whatever, and the secretary was in a meeting, and there was a car that needed moving. And it got quite urgent. And I said, look, just give us it here. I'll do it. And I'd grown up with motor racing as well. Obviously, the same, the car racing.
Yeah.
And I'd always admired and watched things through a broadcast aspect. And because I wanted to do journalism, but that was going to turn. So I did the cricket announcements and did the scores and did the car move. And a couple of people said, that was really clear and good. And I never forget at the same time, and people diss it, but I, 17, 18, I worked in Asda. And, I don't, people have mocked this for years on, but it's just like, it was a great time. It was fun. And they got me on the mic there as well. And that was a great experience for mixing with people, because I used to joke. I mean, some of the things I used to say, honestly, I'd get shut down immediately. Well, the whole store would get shut down completely to people when various things were on offer. But it was a great learning curve. Yeah. It is what it is. And,
in lockdown, I was at Tesco on the checkout. Literally, there was checkout 18, and I absolutely loved it. I think we're quite similar. That we just embrace every opportunity, Graham. You never know who you're going to meet. It's good fun. You're making a difference to people, and why not? I completely agree with you. Why the snobbery? You have to dive in and just embrace life, don't you?
I mean, I can imagine people coming through checkout 18 deliberately. I mean, I don't think the lippy and the wig was necessary, but I mean, it was.
Hey, come on! I had
great entertainment.
It was so funny. It's like 1 to 17. It was probably women of a certain age with their tight perms. Then me, Big Bird, on checkout 18. But you know what? I loved it, and of course, interaction and again, that's the beauty, isn't it? All these life experiences. That's why you fit into a team so well, Graham. It's important.
It's very important, and that was a great experience. So I'd done the cricket with Sussex, and I did that, and it was deemed afterwards that the following year it was kind of turned into a job. So I took it on, and at the time, it's hard to believe now when people watch cricket, but as basic as it sounds, the outgoing batsman being announced with the score, the incoming batter, timing it with the music. And I mean, I was very fortunate. I did Sussex for a few years, all formats of the game, and learned. And Sussex had a hugely successful time at that time. Early mid 2000s, they were brilliant. And around that time, ECB were looking for somebody. And I got to work with and meet Kevin Bannerman. And Kevin and I still work together now. Kevin was brilliant because Kevin has so much experience of sound and music, had done tours with some of the big
so good. Just knows knows the business inside out.
And I think the most proud thing that I'll take from anything, along with the 2019 World Cup, was that we kind of created a basic platform for how cricket is delivered, particularly in white ball format. And you see it now, IPL, you see it in Bash, you see it in different formats. But that way, and you mentioned Phil Williams, who then came on board as well and was more the floor manager. He was looking after what was actually going on, the viewing that people got. And so it wasn't just the sound, it was the viewing of how things were presented. And I think the way that was presented, and 2009, when we hosted the T20 World Cup, was the perfect platform that we showed that. And then everybody else kind of followed that trend. That works, that doesn't. So you try and use that. And it goes back to what we said very early on, that pick the best bits out of all of that and take the best bits. And use that to try and then enhance what you do.
And I'm really interested, Graham, you mentioned your Crohn's disease. Is that tricky to manage day to day? How does that affect your life?
Yeah, it was horrendous at that time. It was horrendous, and everybody suffers from different situations. But in my late teens, early 20s, it was horrific. And I took medication then that now has made an effect on me. Touch wood, I don't suffer too badly from Crohn's. It's such a difficult thing though, and at my worst, it was horrendous. And there I was, very early 20s. And I look back on some of the footage from the car racing and see how gaunt I am, because the weight that you lost, it can be a massive, massive factor. And at the time, you kind of don't realise that there are other people going through this, because it's something you've not necessarily heard of. Again, social media wasn't around then. And having to plan your day and journeys, considering that you're probably going to have to stop to use the toilet, it's cringe. It really is. And, when you're working in a live TV environment, fortunately there's normally two of you, and we weren't often in vision, but, needing that situation, that losing control of, if you need to go, you need to go. And that makes it very, very difficult. And it plays on your mind. When I took the decision when I got to late 20s, 30s, that the medication really wasn't for me, and took that decision, and touch wood, 15 years on, it doesn't cause me too much grief, but I still have little side effects that I was warned about at the time that might affect me in later life. But I've got a great friend that I work with. He's going through something similar and has done for many years, and they're still trying to sort something out for him. And I said to him, what's the point of worrying about 20, 25 years time if you're having no life now? You've got to live life. Life is too short, and do what's right for you. Because I now, and no one really knows about a lot of the effects that I go through and issues I have, but just like basic muscle growth, even when I'm at my best at the gym, which is a long way off and a long time ago, but the muscle just doesn't build. It doesn't build because of those tablets I took, when I was younger. So I went through a bad time, and I look at different spells in my life with different things, and that was a horrible, horrible time. And I always said I would never wish that on a worst enemy, because you're in such a lonely place, having to then go and work and have that, still keep that buzz and be in the good mood and create that good atmosphere in the good day. It was tough at times.
Well, you do so well to manage it, Graham, especially in the high pressure atmosphere in which you work, those long hours. My goodness, I just wondered, how do you, after a day's play, how do you like to unwind? Is it because it's intense, isn't it? You're on the mic 6-7 hours. That concentration is crazy. Do you just like to have a bit of solo time just to breathe?
Yeah, I think quite often it probably is, but depending on the event, there's quite often some driving afterwards, so you then get that downtime where you're driving on your own. Yeah, if we have a test match, it's a lot of concentration, because you're in the ground at 8:30, whatever it is. The game doesn't start till 11. We kind of start 9:30ish, so it's not a full-on intense day throughout. But people forget now with DRS in play, you're watching every ball because, you know, you're having to comment on what happens with the DRS system, which for those that don't know, in cricket, it's like the third umpire, fourth umpire looking at footage if there's a review. So we enhance what's going on in the stadium with the decisions and output of that. So you're concentrating on every ball, plus you can't disappear, but you're kind of concentrating from a, you know, start of play. So it's a long day, and sometimes, you know, you get to the end of that day and you just want to go back and chill in the hotel. You know, and if it's a 5-day game, there's always a couple of nights that you do want company, you know, and it's nice to have that company because you are on your own. Everybody's away. The players are all away from their families. The team are all away from their families that are controlling the match and everything else. So it's nice, you know, on odd nights, that's really nice. And whether that's a quick bite to eat or a quick drink, just a chat, sometimes company is good. But yeah, there are occasions where it is just a case of, do you know what, I just want to go lay on the bed and chill, you know, because you've got to be up the next day to do it again.
But what I love, Graham, you know, I generally enjoy your company when we're on the road, and it is important, isn't it, just to decompress and just have a bit of a giggle, look at the funny things that have happened throughout the day, because it can be lonely.
But isn't it always the case, whatever we're doing, it's having that great fun, it's having that great banter, but when the job needs to be done, it's done. And that's kind of where you need to be at. And I think, my personal opinion, and it's not going to be everybody's, but having that laugh and having that fun and games and banter and a chuckle just takes away from some of those pressure situations because you're actually in such a good mindset. And
love, you're at the top of your game and you're there for a reason. So I know that probably on behalf of millions of cricket fans who have heard your voice, just thank you, because it's summer, it's cricket, we can relax and we can ease into the summer, and it's your voice easing us into the day. And
that is a nice thing. And in more recent years, to hear people that say, I've heard your voice for years, it's so nice, you know, and like you say, a lot of people, it's cricket season. It's a big thing. It is a great honour. It's a great honour, and you know, I've been very lucky to do it for a few years now, and hopefully for a few more. And yeah, just love it, really. Just love it.
Well, Graham, thank you for being the soundtrack to my summers for probably 15 years now, and it's just been such a lovely chat, and thank you for dropping in and just to delve into your career, the pressure, the excitement of that day at Lord's in 2019. And I really appreciate you just dropping in to say hi at Benjy's Cafe Podcast. Thanks for joining me.
It's been a pleasure, Ben.
Thanks for listening to the brilliant Graham Woodward. What a career, what a voice. Don't forget, a fresh new episode of Benjy's Cafe Podcast drops every Tuesday. Just find us wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a follow so every episode gets sent straight to your phone. Tell your friends, tell your family. And if you can, please leave a review. In episode 5, I'll be joined by the comedian, the social media sensation, Richard Franks. It's going to be fun with Mum. I'll get the kettle on. Have a great day.